Hi.
It's 5:05 and welcome into a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We are continuing to track election results now a week and a couple days removed from Election Day 2024. Well, as we reported earlier in the week, it was finally verified by the major television networks yesterday. The Republicans will control the House of Representatives, giving them control and power in all three branches of the government. Trump in the Oval Office, Republicans holding control in the House and in the Senate. We did learn yesterday that Representative Richard Hudson was reelected as the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. That is the group that is in charge of fundraising and electing Republicans in the House of Representatives. Think of it as a caucus. He had this to say, quote, "I am humbled by my colleagues' vote of confidence to continue to lead the effort to hold our House majority for another term. I sought this role because the people in my district are fed up with the direction of the country. Under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they are less prosperous and less safe. The American people have spoken. They want change and have given Republicans an opportunity to clean up the Democrats' mess. If we deliver on our promise to lower prices, secure the border, and unleash American energy, I am confident the American people will reward us at the ballot box in 2026. Already looking ahead to that. I am ready to get back to work." That's North Carolina Congressman Richard Hudson on being reelected the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. And as he notes there in his comments, looking forward to the midterm elections just a couple of a week or so after Election Day. And North Carolina continuing to prove that it, holds as major power in the House of Representatives. Congratulations to Representative Richard Hudson. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services recently fined 4 stores across the state of North Carolina, one in Forsyth, one in Mecklenburg, and a couple in Moore County for price scanning errors. This is something they do from time to time. The fines aim to protect consumers from overcharges due to inaccurate scanner prices. The group out of the Agricultural Department conducts surprise inspections, and stores with an over 2% error rate on overcharges are flagged for follow-ups. Repeat violations do result in fines and mandatory reinspection every 60 days until compliance is achieved. In the third quarter of 2024, significant penalties were in fact issues. The 4 stores, one a Family Dollar in Winston-Salem, was fined $10,000 for multiple inspections showing error rates between 4.5% and, listen to this, 22%, meaning that you pick a product off the shelf, it says it's $4.99. When you scan it, the price could be 22% higher. Pretty remarkable at that Family Dollar in Winston-Salem. There was a Circle K in Kernsville that was fined a little over $1,100 that had an error rate as high as 12% on overcharges. A Family Dollar in the Charlotte area was fined $4,300 after error rates ranged between 4.67% and 8%. That's across multiple inspections. And finally, normally it's convenience stores and gas stations, but an Advanced Auto Parts in Aberdeen was fined $495 with an initial error rate of 6%, but then later repassed inspection. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services does encourage consumers to check receipts for any discrepancies during the holiday shopping season and keep an eye on those prices that you see on the shelves and make sure that they are ringing up the same way when you bring them to check out. You can read more on that story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:10 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Learning additional details this morning about FEMA. Yesterday morning, we chatted with Teresa Opeka from the Carolina Journal about a new report out that indicates that FEMA not only was apparently not visiting and not helping people that had Trump signs in Florida after Hurricane Milton, but similar practices and activities were happening in Western North Carolina. And the FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell, is scheduled to appear next week before the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. That's a subcommittee in the House to answer questions about the agency's preparedness and response to those recent disasters, both Milton and Helene. The hearing, which is scheduled to take place next Tuesday at 10 a.m. before the House Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management, comes after these troubling reports surfaced that, again, FEMA instructed volunteers to avoid certain houses that had Trump signs. Congressman David Rouser, he represents North Carolina's 7th Congressional District. That's mostly the Wilmington area in southeastern North Carolina. He sits on that subcommittee. He posted this on his X account yesterday, quote, "It's been reported that Criswell instructed FEMA workers to avoid homes with Trump signs, despite the agency's mission to assist all," he puts that in caps, "Hurricane Helene victims. This raises serious concerns about the federally funded agencies putting politics over people during some of their darkest days. We need answers as to why this happened." That subcommittee does oversee FEMA. Transportation and Infrastructure Committee Chairman Congressman Sam Groves from Missouri and Subcommittee Chairman Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania were already in the process of conducting an investigation into FEMA's preparedness, response strategies, and capabilities to provide sufficient and prompt relief to those victims, both in Florida and North Carolina. Graves and Perry have requested detailed responses from FEMA last month in the light of those concerns about the agency's processes, priorities, actions, and resources, including North Carolina disaster victims' concerns about the pace of FEMA's response and the ability to provide them with necessary assistance. And this is something that became really a hot-button political issue. You had individuals in Western North Carolina reporting, hey, FEMA's not on the ground, just stating a fact. Hey, they're not here. That was then met with comments like those of Governor Roy Cooper, Democrat Governor Roy Cooper, saying that those comments were misinformation, hurtful and harmful to the cause, and needed to stop. Meanwhile, people actually on the ground, again, continued to report that they had not seen anything from FEMA and that all they had received were text messages saying, hey, congratulations, you're eligible for 2 nights in a hotel room in the Charlotte area, which did not, of course, help people that were stranded, trapped, and unable to get out of their communities due to roads and bridges washed away. Really a dark time in Western North Carolina, and in many cases, the reports were that the federal government was not pulling their own weight. This was all blown open by Marnie Washington. That's the former FEMA worker who was fired after a text chain was leaked last week showing her instructing colleagues to avoid houses that had Trump signs in their yard in Florida after Hurricane Milton. She told the Daily Mail that FEMA is lying about that scandal and is making her what she calls a, quote, scapegoat of a wider practice. She does claim that she has proof that FEMA is lying and that other FEMA employees have done the same thing. That was in a podcast with Roland Martin that she made those comments, where she also said, quote, "This is not isolated. This is a colossus event of avoidance, not just in the state of Florida. You'll find that same evidence in the Carolinas as well." Very troubling information coming out of this, and hopefully we'll get some additional information, at least some, next Tuesday, 10 a.m., when the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, their subcommittee, meets. We'll track those details next week and have them for you coming up on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:14, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get a look at some wet roadways this morning. Boomer Von Cannon's got the latest on traffic.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Yes. You go, Brother Hot.
It's 5:20. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. We are also streaming live on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel this morning. Also welcome you to check out the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find the links at carolinajournal.com and at WBT.com as well. Keeping our attention on Washington, D.C. this morning, Republican senators chose John Thune of South Dakota as their first new leader in nearly 2 decades. As President-elect Donald Trump is looking forward to his second term in the White House, the new majority leader will guide the Senate as Republicans work on their priority, their mandate that they feel was given to them by the American public last Tuesday as they work to pass tax cuts, consider Trump-nominated judges and cabinet officials, and navigate battles over government spending, foreign aid, and, of course, the debt ceiling. Thune will have a pretty sizable majority, way more than pundits were expecting going into the election. Republicans have 53 votes in the Senate, way more than they were predicted at just around 50 or 51, as they will work on keeping everything together. Thune, who's 63 years old, defeated Senator John Cornyn of Texas and Senator Rick Scott of Florida for the position Wednesday afternoon, and this was after a secret ballot election, 2 of those taking place before Thune of South Dakota was successful in that. He did serve as the number 2 to Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell for 6 years and staked out a middle ground during his campaign as he agreed to listen closely to his GOP colleagues on the direction of the chamber and openly embrace the Trump agenda. He did so yesterday, and that obviously allowed him to cruise into this leadership position. Again, Republicans, we are learning this morning, will control the House of Representatives. Mike Johnson to continue as the speaker there as the Trump transition team continues to announce new cabinet positions. The big one yesterday, Matt Gaetz, the Republican from Florida, tapped as Trump's attorney general. He did immediately resign from the House of Representatives, starting about an 8-week clock where Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will have time to nominate a new individual to take over Gaetz' seat in the House of Representatives. A lot of news still breaking out of Washington, D.C. We are keeping a close eye on it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:23. We are talking about ICE this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. To navigate us through this conversation, Katie Zender, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us. ICE, Katie, that's what we're talking about this morning. What's the relevance of that, and what are we talking about this morning?
Right. Good morning, Nick. Thank you for having me on. So on Tuesday, Governor Cooper's office put out a press release. There is a company coming to North Carolina very soon known as Abstract Ice. They're a company that produces specialty craft ice products. That's right, Nick. And so they're going to be coming to Forest City in Rutherford, North Carolina, and they will be the company is projected to create 26 new jobs and invest over $14 million into the economy in Rutherford County.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant economic impact. Safe to assume, Katie, we've seen a lot of this, especially when the governor's involved with an announcement that they're getting some sort of economic incentive from the state of North Carolina. Are we talking about a JDIG grant here? What exactly are the incentives that are pulling them here to the Tar Heel State?
Right. So that's the most important distinction here, Nick, is this isn't actually a JDIG grant or what's known as a Job Development Investment Grant. It's actually a One North Carolina Fund grant, which is a performance-based grant. So the performance is the main factor that distinguishes it from a JDIG grant. The companies don't get the money up front. They only get the money if they meet their target job creations and capital investments. So for Abstract Ice, this is a $75,000 grant. Last week, we talked about a semiconductor company that's expanding in Greensboro, North Carolina, that is also under a One North Carolina Fund grant, which is the performance-based grant here. So these are 2 new companies that are going to be either starting up in North Carolina or expanding their business in North Carolina, but these are performance-based grants, and so the companies only get the money if they meet their targets.
Well, you, if I heard you correctly, you said $75,000, which, let's be clear, that's not a small sum of money. But at the same time, Katie, it's not like they're being lured in with millions of dollars. And you can imagine starting a facility like that is going to cost definitely more than $75,000 to do. I'm sure you had to dig into this company. What exactly do they do with ice?
Right. So this is a California-based company. If you couldn't figure that out, just based off of the information given. But Abstract Ice was founded in 2018, and they manufacture specialty and craft ice on a wide scale. They serve chiefly bars, grocery stores, and event venues. Abstract artisanal ice in various shapes and sizes, from custom cubes to logos or artistic designs. Yeah, so basically they're just a craft ice company that manufactures specialty ice, whether it be for a special event, a bar, what have you. Yeah, it's a very specific and niche company. So yeah, definitely, not putting millions and millions of dollars into funding this company here, but giving them a little bit of an incentive to meet their targets and to bring more jobs to North Carolina, hopefully.
Well, I guess maybe this is kind of on track. We've seen a huge boom in the last couple of years with distilling in North Carolina. That has really blown up across the state. North Carolina is one of the top states for custom distilleries now. Maybe North Carolina is looking at becoming some sort of the alcohol capital with a lot of this new investment here in the state. Which, regardless of whether you agree with that or not, it brings money, it brings jobs to the state, Katie.
Right, exactly, Nick. So yeah, I think we could potentially, see that happen. And this is a company, that's going to fuel that forward and push that forward. So, regardless of how you might feel about that, it is going to bring jobs and money to the state. And I don't think people are going to stop drinking anytime soon. So this could be a very good thing for North Carolina. They talked a little bit about wages, and so obviously salary is going to vary a little bit depending on the position, but the average salary is going to be about 57,000. The average salary in Rutherford County currently is 45,000, so it's about $12,000 more than the average salary in Rutherford County. So this could be, if they can come through on this and fulfill this, it could potentially be very good for the people of Rutherford County.
I want to ask you about the comments that Governor Roy Cooper made, but do we get anything on a timeline as to when they are expected to break ground? Or are they purchasing a facility that's already here and retrofitting it? Any idea on the timeline when we could see some ice flowing out of Rutherford County?
Right. So we don't have any information on a timeline yet, or, what that facility is going to look like, if they're building a new facility or if they're, upgrading or remodeling a current facility. But yeah, in terms of what Governor Cooper said, he said, today we celebrate Abstract Ice investing in Rutherford County. Western North Carolina is open for business, and innovative companies like Abstract Ice will continue to invest in our state with a highly skilled workforce, strong infrastructure, and great quality of life. So, considering what Western North Carolina has been through, over the last 6 weeks or so, if they can come through on this promise, and Abstract Ice can actually bring money and jobs to the economy, this could be a very good thing for the people of Western North Carolina as they're trying to rebuild their lives out there. We also have a quote from Senator Timothy Moffitt, who, we've kind of heard a little bit more from, considering, what's happened in Western North Carolina.
Sure.
Congratulations to Abstract Ice on their exciting expansion to North Carolina. This milestone reflects our shared commitment to fostering economic growth and innovation across our state. That's Senator Timothy Moffitt, who represents Henderson County, Rutherford County, and a couple of other counties.
It's an interesting story indeed. You can read more on Katie's story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. 5:29 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Ice, ice, baby. Let's head on over to traffic and get an update with Boomer Von Cannon. Boomer, how are the roads looking?
Hey, man, it's rain, baby. That's out.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. North Carolina Congressman Richard Hudson has been reelected as the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. That's the group that's in charge of electing House Republicans and, of course, fighting for and working for a majority in the House, which, of course, Republicans were successful in doing. Chairman Hudson said this yesterday: "I am humbled by my colleagues' vote of confidence to continue to lead the efforts to hold our House majority for another term. I sought this role because the people in my district are fed up with the direction of the country under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They are less prosperous and less safe. The American people have spoken. They want change and have given Republicans an opportunity to clean up the Democrats' mess. If we deliver on our promise to lower prices, secure the border, and unleash American energy, I am confident the American people will reward us at the ballot box in 2026. I am ready to get back to work." That's NRCC Chairman Richard Hudson yesterday. Already looking toward the midterm elections, where, of course, Republicans will have to defend majorities in both the House and the Senate. We'll keep an eye on it. It is now 5:37 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Continuing our election coverage here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, a week or so removed from Election Day 2024, the question is, do third parties play an impact in these local elections that we track across all 100 counties? Brianna Kramer with the Carolina Journal's got details this morning on some libertarian candidates that could have acted as ballot busters for some General Assembly races. Good morning, Brianna.
Yes, good morning, Nick. It looks like libertarian candidates did play a spoiler role in some key North Carolina races. Looking at the results from last week's election, it looks like libertarians really had an impact in some of these major contests that libertarian candidates were running in. In some of them, they received more votes than the difference between the Democrat and the Republican candidates. So in some of those tight races, libertarians really had a profound impact on the outcome.
You know, when of course, everybody looks at the top of the ticket, the race between Trump and Harris, and there was like 6 or 7 options in that presidential contest for folks that voted. Those candidates, there's so many votes in that contest, Brianna, it really doesn't make that big of a deal. At least it hasn't really in recent election cycles. It's been 30 years since the libertarians played a role in that. But as we work our way down the ballot into local races like the General Assembly and maybe even some county commission, city council, school board races where the margins are so tight, it really can have an impact, in the third party, who in most cases doesn't end up winning, as you just noted, could change the results of the election by stealing just even a few thousand votes.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of times people think, oh, the libertarian candidate or the third party candidates is not going to win. And that may be true a lot of times, but they can also impact how many votes the Republican and the Democrat candidates get and which one ends up on top. So even up to the lieutenant governor's race in last week's election, the Democrat Rachel Hunt, she won by about 96,000 votes. But the Libertarian candidate garnered 103,000 votes. So that's more than enough to have changed the result if those voters aligned more with the Republican candidate. And then we also look at the state auditor. And then the Republican was able to edge out the Democrat by about 104,000 votes in that race. And then the Libertarian got over 165,000. So again, a significant factor in the outcome was that Libertarian drawing in so many votes when there was that tight margin. And as you mentioned, as we go down to the district level and we look at the state races and the General Assembly, we see the same thing.
There is one specific General Assembly race that you've got in your article over at carolinajournal.com that is razor thin, and the Libertarians got just over 1,000 votes. What contest is that?
Yes. So an official at the North Carolina Libertarian Party was discussing this House District 32, in which Democrat Brian Cohn beat Republican incumbent Frank Sossaman by just 182 votes. And while that's still the unofficial number, that's looking like it's going to remain like that. And really, that's a sting to House Republicans because the Libertarian candidate Ryan Brown, he was running in that race and he got over 1,000 votes. And meanwhile, like I said, it was just a 182 vote difference between the Democrat and the Republican. So that was enough to alter the victory and ultimately prevent the General Assembly from retaining their veto-proof supermajority. So that was a key race needed, and it looks like the Republicans were not able to keep that. And the Libertarian Party is taking credit for that as well, and they are happy with what they did across the state on election night in terms of beating out some of these candidates and having a make things up when it comes to the status quo and some priorities that they want that they don't see from either side of the aisle. I know you have libertarians that can lean more left or more right. Libertarians are more limited government minded, and so that tends to be more of a conservative thought process, but that isn't necessarily always the case. But when it comes to this election cycle and some of their issues that they had with Republicans in the General Assembly, one issue was gun rights. I know libertarians had been pushing for constitutional carry, and the General Assembly wasn't willing to cooperate with them and push that agenda forward here in North Carolina. And so I think they were a little fed up with that, not getting any response from Senator Berger or from the House side on that. And so that constitutional carry didn't really go anywhere this past session. And then other issues like certificate of need law and occupational licensing laws, those were some issues that the libertarian officials mentioned to me as things that kind of drove them to campaign against the GOP and bring their own candidates to the table.
Did you get the sense in your interview that if the Republicans had worked on some of these issues that they say are important, that they would have been less willing to put candidates into these races or maybe seek after individuals to run against them? Or is this a situation, Brianna, where no amount of good is going to change the result and somebody's going to run anyway?
You know, I did get the sense that they're willing to work with even both sides of the aisle. The official I spoke with said that their principles are not for sale. They're happy to sit down and listen in good faith to anyone who wants to work with us on specific issues to advance liberty. They also mentioned to me that representatives of both parties in power have contacted them since the election and expressed interest in talking with them in the future. So that's interesting that, you know, they may be taking note of what the libertarians did in some of these big races. And it sounds like libertarians are willing to, you know, come to the table and negotiate on some things and, you know, maybe in future elections not put a candidate forward if they're happy with what one of the parties is pushing for. There's definitely some races that will be tight again going, you know, in 2 years or so in the next round of elections if libertarians continue to push forward their candidate. Senate District 18 was won by just 38 votes, and then
Wow.
House District 25 was won by 526 votes. And in both of those races, they had libertarian candidates who received way more votes than that difference. So definitely an issue that could remain if the parties don't decide to acknowledge the libertarians and, you know, give them a listening ear.
It's a very interesting statewide conversation. You can read more on Brianna's story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:45, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get a look at some more wet roadways this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you, Nick. And with the rain.
It's 5:50. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Thursday morning to you. We are streaming live on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel as well. You can check out our podcast in your favorite podcast app or visiting WBT.com and clicking on the podcast tab. Well, a new company is coming to North Carolina, and they specialize in ice. Yes, on Tuesday, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper announced that Abstract Ice Incorporated, which is a California specialty ice manufacturer, try that on, will open a new facility in Forest City, North Carolina. They are expected to invest somewhere in the ballpark of $14.7 million, and they are expected to create about 26 jobs, supporting an average salary of about $57,000 a year, which does surpass Rutherford County's average income by about $12,000. Abstract Ice is known for producing custom slow-melting ice cubes for bars, grocery stores, and event venues. They aim to expand their national capacity with this new location on the East Coast. The company's innovative technology automates the handcrafted cocktail ice process, producing various shapes from spears to cubes that can be etched with designs and even have logos imprinted on them. State officials, including Governor Roy Cooper's North Carolina Commerce Secretary, as well as local leaders, praised the economic impact of Abstract Ice, emphasizing North Carolina's appeal for business expansion due to its skilled workforce and supportive infrastructure. Now, the project will be receiving about $75,000 worth of performance-based grants from the One North Carolina Fund, which matches local government contributions to promote job creation and investment. And while state leaders highlight the fund's role in driving economic growth, as always, critics do argue that these incentives constitute what they deem as corporate welfare that unfavorably selects and favors select companies at the expense of taxpayers. Joseph Harris of the John Locke Foundation expressed concerns, claiming such incentives are politically motivated and do not produce substantial benefits for the state's broader economy. This is an ongoing discussion about should the state government play in the grant-making process and giving some of these economic incentives out to companies like Abstract Ice and others. They're not just selected in this. Anytime you see a statewide money, whether it be from the One North Carolina Fund or JDIG, the Job Growth and Development Grant, that is always the conversation that comes forward. However, they are opening their new facility in Forest City, 26 new jobs, about a $14.5 million investment coming from Abstract Ice. Here's something to keep an eye on as we head into the busy Thanksgiving and Christmas season. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services recently fined 4 stores in Forsyth, Mecklenburg, and Moore counties for price scanning errors. These fines are aimed to protect consumers from overcharges due to inaccuracy in scanner prices, meaning that there's a difference between what the price is listed on the shelf versus what it rings up as. The department conducts surprise inspections, and stores that have an over 2% error rate on overcharges are flagged for follow-ups. Repeat violations result in hefty fines as well as mandatory reinspection every 60 days until compliance is achieved. In the third quarter of 2024, there were some pretty hefty fines put out. A Family Dollar in Winston-Salem was fined $10,000. They had multiple inspections, repeat inspections, showing error rates between 4.5% and 22%, meaning a product that you ring up could be as much as 22% higher than the price listed on the shelf. Pretty remarkable there. They were fined $10,000 for that. There was a Circle K in Kernansville that was fined a little over $1,100. They had an average error rate of about 12% on overcharges. Pretty hefty there. A Family Dollar in Charlotte fined $4,300 after error rates ranged between 4.67% and 8% across inspections. And while this does typically lend itself to dollar stores and gas stations, there was an Advanced Auto Parts in Aberdeen that was fined $495 with an initial error rate of 6%, However, they did later pass re-inspection in that 60-day window. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services does encourage and give a warning to consumers ahead of the holiday season to keep track of what things are priced at on the shelves and make sure that they scan up and ring up for those same dollar amounts. You can read more on that story over on our website, carolinajournal.com. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell is scheduled to appear next week before a committee on the Transportation and Infrastructure T&I subcommittee to answer questions about the agency's preparedness and response to recent disasters, including those the likes of Hurricane Helene and Milton. The hearing, which is scheduled to take place Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. before the House Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management, comes after multiple troubling reports surfaced that FEMA instructed volunteers to avoid homes displaying Trump signs following Hurricane Milton, not only in Florida, where the initial reports surfaced, but also homes with Trump signs in western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene devastated the area. Congressman David Rouzer from the 7th Congressional District in North Carolina, who serves on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, says, quote, "It's been reported that Criswell instructed FEMA workers to avoid homes with Trump signs, despite the agency's mission to assist all Hurricane Helene victims. This raises serious concerns about federally funded agencies putting politics over people during some of their darkest days. We need answers as to why this happens." That ends the quote there from Congressman David Rouzer. The Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management does have a discretionary oversight on FEMA. And again, this meeting happens next Tuesday at 10 a.m. as there has been an incredible amount of criticism put on to FEMA after the response from Hurricane Helene. Unfortunately, some folks being told, hey, FEMA's on the ground, only to never have run into a single representative from the organization. It's a story that we'll continue to track right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. That's going to do it for a Thursday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We are back tomorrow morning at 5 right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.